sunshine. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks everyone who's put this together, especially in the name of Peter, who I've worked with for a very long period of time. It's an honor to be here talking at the seminar. His name is a great man. All right, so I'm here to talk about another type of infrastructure. Some of what I'll be saying is similar to what Mike was just talking about, but the difference is everyone sees roads, everyone knows roads, everybody understands when roads are underwater. Few people know where wastewater infrastructure is, nor do they care. And if they do know where it is, they avoid it. So my job and our job at DEM becomes a little bit more complicated because we have to not only talk about a problem, we have to just talk about the infrastructure first. As journalists, I would encourage you all to kind of, build up those relationships first with the facilities, the local facilities, my office. There's a few, Barbara Polkett at the Journal, especially, does a wonderful job of keeping in touch. She says she has the wastewater bug. So when a problem happens, Peter certainly did this all the time. She has another term for it, which I won't say, but Peter did it all the time. So when something happened, he'd just pick up the phone, talk to me, and he would already have the understanding of what was going on. But I have one story that I'll talk to you a little bit. But anyway, so here is the infrastructure that we're looking at in Rhode Island specifically. So we're looking east to west. We're looking down over Narragansett Bay. We have, I'm just going to do it the old man way instead of using the pointer. So we have Woonsocket, Barville, Smithfield. We have the NBC Buckland Point facility, Fields Point facility, East Providence, Warren, Bristol, Newport, Jamestown, Block Island's over there, Westerly, Narragansett, Scarborough, Quonset, East Greenwich, and then these three up here, the Patuxent River, Warwick, Westward, and Cranston. One of the things that's important to know about the way we treat wastewater is that because of what Mike said, water flows downhill. So the major locations where these facilities treat tend to be at the low point because you don't want to spend a lot of money to pump water where you don't have to. So you let gravity do its thing. So I like this kind of angle because you sort of get this intuitive knowledge of you can see all the water coming up from its various drainage basins coming down and sort of descending on Narragansett Bay. And this perimeter is the perimeter that keeps Narragansett Bay and so many of the other watersheds clean from the 100 million gallons or so of wastewater that Rhode Islanders produce every day. So we also have another aspect, which is the collection system. This is a graphic where now we're looking the normal way up north. That's the West Warwick and Warwick Wastewater Facility. The purple is a partial representation of the sewer lines that run throughout the state. That's partial because we left some areas empty so you could get a clue. Same thing. So, in the Cranston area, obviously, if you looked at every street, it's just a purple mass. But in some of the other areas, and this represents only 2,600 or so miles of sewer lines. It's probably about double that when you count everything in, depending on how you define it. But again, you see all of these main lines heading down into following gravity. The engineers who designed the Providence sewer system did an amazing job in the late 19th, early 20th century. Because they designed that facility with only a few pumping stations, which was brilliant how they did everything. But again, the idea is to get everything going down to the lowest point so you can treat it. So here we go. We have the West Warwick Wastewater Treatment Facility. Actually, I live about right over here. So I always know when there's a problem. They hate it because I live so close to them, but that's fine. But this was built, obviously you can tell this is a rather wet land that it was built on starting around the 1930s, and it's expanded ever since. So you have all of the flow coming in, not just from West Warwick, from a number of other areas, coming in, going through various successive levels of treatment to its point of final discharge here in the Patuxent River, and that's it in normal operations. Actually, Google Earth did a flyover just about a month after the 2010 floods, and I wish they left that up, because it showed the facilities still under construction as they were. This is the West Warwick facility, and if I just, can it back up? Yeah. So we're going to be taking a look this way, and there's a railroad trestle. This is March 15th, in the Little Flood, when we had a river crest of 14.7 feet of the Patuxent River. You can tell, obviously, we know these things are lowlands. They're designed to handle floods.
There was obviously even more capacity that this plant could have handled. It's just the way it's designed, so those things are in place. And those are the kinds of things we expect. Here's Warwick, again, built in a low point, right in this oxbow of the Patuxent River, just a little bit ways down the road. 95, there's that beautiful image of 95 that was flooded over here. There is a berm that goes around that was built in the 80s, I believe, after some other flooding. And this is a very complex, just like West Warwick. These are not the simple facilities that were built when I first started working at DEM in the late 80s, where you just have some very simple measures of treatment. These are very complex systems to build, to remove more and more levels of nutrients. The other pitch I want to make sure I get this in, is the men and women who work at these facilities often don't get the attention they deserve. So anybody who wants to do some good human interest stories, there's some great people here who nobody wants to talk to because they deal with sewage. But they do a great job, most of the time. Here's Warwick, March 15th. Same thing, when West Warwick was flooded, this is the berm, working very well. This is the Patuxent River at about 14.7. And we had about another 3 or 4 feet of volume around that perimeter. There's the plant, working well. This is March 30th. This is the, no, excuse me, this is March 15th. This is the Knight Street pump station. This is 95, right just before, around the airport connector to Jefferson Boulevard. Pump stations are designed in floodplains because, again, it's the low point, but this worked. This, you can see the generators puffing away, the pumps were running, the submarine door was sealed, everything was nice and dry and encased, everything was working good, but you add a couple more feet and then you might get it, you're going to get inundation. This is the West Warwick facility in the big flood, March 30th, 31st, April 1st, 2010. I have never heard wastewater operators with this level of emotion in my life, obviously. This was not just the end of their professional world. These people put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into making these facilities clean, work well, run well, and they were watching them go underwater. This is the Patuxent River coming up. That, if you saw before, is the top of a clarifier that's built for flood purposes. That would be here. If I'm standing next to it, I would be looking over it like this. So, a lot of water. Again, the National Weather Service that morning, early that morning, was posting on their public websites what the impacts was. A foot or two more than we had a week before. But the rain didn't fall the way the models looked at. So the rain kept falling right over the Patuxent River. It was diabolical how that occurred. And it just kept going and going and going. So that's West Warwick going underwater. That's Warwick. That is water flowing over the berm, coming down again. Panic phone call, these guys. And they were scrambling those last few hours when they realized that everything was changing to get equipment out, to get whatever they could out, and to get people out. But, I mean, just to see this is very expensive infrastructure that is just about to be, the water came up to about here. And I didn't throw too many shots in because I didn't want to do that. So, that's what happened. We know what happens now. We know what happens when you put too much water into a system. And so, what have we done? On the wastewater side, well, the first thing we've started to do is to work with URI and Coastal and Sea Grant to provide information internally to the Office of Water Resources. Just like everyone else, we're saying we were trained to think that the environment was steady and stable. Back in engineering, when I was learning engineering, using an abacus, they did not teach us that the environment would change. Well, it does. So we have to kind of get over that. So there's some wonderful educational opportunities that we've been able to have, that we intend to have. We have especially Dave Valley from the National Weather Service. I don't know if he's been part of any of this yet, but we just had him up yesterday. He's fantastic. He's also from my hometown, and his father taught at my high school. So it's, total Rhode Island thing. But when I don't know if you see any of these, but once we start seeing these trends, like he's a meteorologist, he's not a climatologist, but he's showing us the trends from 1933 to present. You're seeing increased 1-inch, 2-inch level storms, snow patterns that are very divergent, which makes sense. All of these things that fit what climate change is saying. So now we're preparing for it. So the one specific thing that we are doing as we begin to work with the facilities, besides the training in-house, we've had a couple of superintendents conference because we're such a small state, I can get all the superintendents of all 19 plants in and at a pretty much a moment's notice, and we provide training, and they get to talk to each other. So we've had at least 2 discussions of climate change. They're freaked out. They've got enough regulations to deal with. They don't know what to do. This is bigger than them. So now what we're doing is we've just got approval, thank you, Ames Colt from the Rhode Island Bays River Watershed.
Coordination team.
Thank you, coordination team, whatever it is. All I know is they gave us money, and I really like them. So we are going out to RFP to do adaptation, vulnerability assessments at all the major plants and the major pieces of infrastructure in the collection system, so that we can begin to broach this conversation. Now again, in some ways I'm in competition with my good friend Mike over here, because everyone's going to say fix the roads, but nobody knows about the wastewater because nobody sees it. So one of the things that we need to do, and we can use as much help as possible, is to get the word out that these wastewater facilities exist. They tend to be the municipality's most expensive infrastructure. They're very complicated. You need very professional people who understand how to operate these things so you get nutrient reductions down to 2 or 3, 4 or 5 milligrams per liter. Very complex stuff. And they're all sitting right on that battlefield. You saw that picture. They're right on the front lines of where all the water's going to go. So our hope is in the next 6 months we'll start and begin to get this vulnerability assessments out and done. Part of that will be public education so that we can start working with the communities and the decision makers in the communities and at the state level to say, we've identified these issues. Now this is on everyone's radar screen, and then we'll see where we go from there. And by that point, we hope that there'll be a little more consensus, a little bit more awareness about what's happening to the environment, to the local climate, to the local way the water is doing what it's doing. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll work more with you so we have to tell our story.